What if Russia bombs Chernobyl? Here's what could happen, what won't happen, and how Pripyat can change the incoming war in Ukraine. This is Ukraine. Well, this was Ukraine. After anti-government protests ousted pro-Kremlin President Viktor Yanukovych in 2014, Russian forces entered Crimea and orchestrated a referendum that led to its annexation. Following the referendum, Russian proxies in the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk seized government buildings, set up barricades and declared independence, sparking the Ukrainian Civil War, also known as the War in Donbass. After 2 years of continuous battles and several failed ceasefires, the fighting mostly died out. The war entered a stagnation phase that lasted until last year. In April 2021, Moscow began pulling troops to the Ukrainian border for exercises, so it said. The number of Russian troops near Ukraine then amounted for about 80,000. In a second buildup in December, it reached 100,000, raising fears of a looming invasion. While analysts talked about a possible invasion from the east, Russia began pulling troops to the north. Russian forces left the depths of Siberia and the Far East and began moving to Belarus for 10-day-long exercises in February. Only the soldiers heading to the country were told their stay would last for over half a year. With its troops stationed in southern Belarus, Russia's army was now within a shelling range of Kiev, but it was also just a few dozen miles away from Pripyat, the site of the Chernobyl disaster.
Внимание, внимание! Внимание, внимание! Уважаемые товарищи! Городской совет народных депутатов сообщает, что в связи с аварией на Чернобыльской атомной электростанции в городе Припяти складывается неблагоприятная радиационная обстановка. Партийными и советскими органами, воинскими частями принимаются необходимые меры.
This was the mandatory evacuation message broadcast in Pripyat on April 26, 1986, following the biggest nuclear disaster ever recorded. After the core of the reactor melted, it released radioactive contamination that poisoned the area within 20 miles around it. People living in Belarus kept getting thyroid cancer decades after the meltdown. Less than 100 people died in the explosion itself, but it caused up to 16,000 deaths in the years that followed. With the disaster remaining classified for days, school children marched in Labor Day parades on May 1st while the air was full of radioactive fallout. Radioactive material continued leaking from the plant up until May 4th, 1986. 35 years later, the deserted town near the Chernobyl reactor remains one of the most radioactive places on the planet. But how does that affect the war? Well, it's unlikely that Russian soldiers would die of radiation poisoning while invading Ukraine from the north, but while the radiation in Pripyat might not be deadly to them, it might interfere with the systems on their tanks and APCs. So what is Russia gonna do? Let's state the obvious, it will not bomb Chernobyl. If it does, the blast would be the equivalent of a dirty bomb detonation less than 60 miles away from Kiev and less than 40 miles away from the Russian forces stationed in southern Belarus. It would be deadly for pretty much everyone involved. Instead, Russian troops would likely take a slight detour, invading Ukraine from the area west of Pripyat. While Putin's been talking about pulling the troops from the border, Russian forces built a bridge across the Belarusian portion of the Pripyat River, 3 miles away from the Ukrainian border. That bridge, which appeared overnight on February 15th, is located right outside the area with the highest levels of radiation in the outskirts of Chernobyl. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces pulled to the Chernobyl zone of exclusion for military drills designed to prepare them for an incursion from the north. With Russia being reluctant to take the shortest route through the former nuclear facility, holding Pripyat may give Ukraine's army an advantage, allowing it to operate in an area the Russians are actively avoiding. The town might also prove a strategic stronghold for civilian insurgents and guerrilla fighters. The woods surrounding the vicinity of the nuclear power plant could easily hide groups of Ukrainian rebels in the case of a Russian invasion. The woods of the Ukrainian Polisia will then be home to cross-border raids and sabotage for the first time since World War II. So will Russia invade? I don't know. Maybe it already has when you're watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think is going to happen, or what's already happening on the ground? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting videos. See you next time.